Hey everybody, welcome to part 2 of sampling in drums. In this video we're going to be covering a sampler and basically trying to see what sort of crazy, interesting, glitchy, maybe drum sounds we can get out of this thing, right? So here I have a normal sounding acoustic drum loop. Cool, I can just click and drop that inside our sampler to have it here. And I would like to open up the zone section here. Right now we have one zone, basically no matter what note I play, it will always be playing from the same place. If we wanted to play from different places, I can create new zone. I can, for example, limit this zone to this area here, create a new slice just by duplicating that one and making our next slice maybe over here, right? And so on. Another quick way to do this is actually right-clicking in our loop, and when we go to slice to new MIDI track, we can have specific sampler presets. We can make our own or use the ones available, and it will right away slice a sample. Like if I click here, it will right away slice it with all the zones separated, so that when played chromatically, these specific notes will play this loop in order as best as it can. Now we can play around with this in a number of ways. For example, we can have a random, we can get rid of this MIDI loop here altogether. Let's disable our original loop. And let's create a new MIDI clip. Let's start it from C1 perhaps. And let's go ahead, find our arpeggiator, put it here, drop a random, and notice what happens when we play this drum loop now. Doesn't sound so good because it didn't cut the slices so nicely. We actually want to make the slices cut very good. So instead, let's go back to our drum thing, go slice to new MIDI track, and let's actually slice this like so, but make sure that it catches the transients, right? Let's slice this by transients and now drop that in there. Now notice what happens if we play our sounds. There will be first off much more of them, so if we drop this arpeggiator and random inside our new MIDI clip, we will have right. They're still a bit sharp sounding. We can tone them down by going into our like filter global section, and let's kind of bring this down a little bit over here. Let's hear what it sounds like. Give them a little bit shorter decay time as to not have them like have that click at the end. This is very nice. Okay, so now we have this sampler, which is having different zones of itself triggered thanks to this random MIDI device, which sends different notes to it. We can go ahead and highlight both of them and group them like so. And now what this does is puts these two devices into one chain of an instrument rack. Now in this instrument rack we can have multiple chains, each with their own instruments and devices running in parallel to the mixer. This is very cool because we can now just duplicate this chain to make a second one and create wholly different sounds inside it while keeping it all inside one, instrument rack. Let's rename this to maybe drums 2. And here let's create a little bit different sort of timbre to this drum sound here. Let's solo it so that we hear it. Very good. In this one, let's go for a more like FM-y type of drum. Luckily for us, in Sampler there is this pitch oscillator section which gives you dedicated filter modulation or amplitude modulation, a dedicated oscillator for this. We can go ahead and keep this at FM, and notice what happens as I bring the volume up. The sound drastically starts to alter. We can change the octave of this oscillator, which will affect this process. Get some metallic drums going. We can change the waveform of this, or we can also directly tune the oscillators by clicking on the fixed mode. I would actually like to keep this in the low area for this. Let's use this high-pitched metallic thing, but let's shape it further. Let's go into our filter global section. I'll turn on the filter here and bring the cutoff down a bit. And instead turn on the filter envelope, bring the amount up, gives it a nice pluck to that sound. This one I think will be okay. Okay, now we can duplicate again this group. You probably start to see where we're going with this. Let's solo this third one, and instead let's get rid of this oscillator section. Instead, let's create some nice strange like pitch modulative effect here. If we go to the modulation section, we have dedicated LFOs. We can, for example, just set this to pitch, turn off retrigger. Let's bring this to sample and hold. Right, but let's also make them a little bit. Let's give this a reason to actually pitch up and down. I will go ahead, turn on our oscillator FM once again. This will be okay. We can, for example, to add a little bit of variation, I will just drop a beat repeat right after this third one. Let's actually even rename it to drums 3. And here, if I just listen to this, I'm going to bring this to a high grid level, high variation, lower interval, and lower chance. Let's bring the decay up. Turn the filter on. Bring this up here. And we have a nice, interesting sort of glitchy color for the drum. Let's go ahead and duplicate our third one. Rename it to drums 4. And now in this situation, let's get rid of this beat repeat for now. Let's put this in a little bit slightly different like spatial position. I will drop a delay here, bring this to first to 1 millisecond, unlink them, change this to time, bring this to around, I don't know, 15, let's hear. You know, slightly different sound as well, you know, due to its like chorus effect almost. I will go into our modulation section, get rid of this LFO, and I think this is good enough for this sound. Okay, let's go ahead and duplicate it as before, rename drums 5. So for this one, let's maybe just have it in reverse, you know? Now pressing reverse just like this isn't enough. We actually have to highlight all the slices, like so, or press Command or Control A, and then in this area, if we go press reverse, they will all be playing in reverse now. Okay, at this point I would like you to maybe increase the scale on one of the randoms, and if you press right click you can copy value to siblings, so all of them will be having this increase in octaves. Very nice. Okay, let's duplicate drums 5. Rename it drums 6. Let's make this one a sort of glitchy clicking pattern, you know. Let's go into our filter global section and bring the random pan up on this one. And let's keep this envelope short and clicky as it is. But also let's maybe highlight all of these slices. Get rid of this reverse function first off. Nice. And let's bring in the beat repeat again. Turn on insert. Bring up the variation. And let's keep this one in the higher grid ranges, right? Bring in the decay a little bit. And the filter. This will be a little bit different from the previous beat repeat one, as it will have a little bit, you know, bigger grids. Cool. So now we have a bunch of these drum samplers. Let's maybe make one more for old time's sake. Let's take this one, duplicate it, rename it drum 7. Very good. And this one here, let's maybe play around with the aux envelope, right? We didn't touch this yet. If we turn on the aux envelope, this means basically it's an envelope that can be mapped to anything in this sampler, or anything that is possible. In this case, let's go ahead and highlight all the slices in this one. Highlight all the slices, go to our sample, make sure they're all looped, like so. And in our modulation section, let's turn on maybe the loop length. Let's bring this to maximum. Let's get rid of this FM sound. And notice, this is our length of the loop. If we bring it up here, it creates basically just computer sounding glitches. Right? The higher sustain, the lower sustain levels, basically. Cool. This is a nice sound. Let's leave this, and actually let's duplicate it. Let's one more. Okay. Drums 8, and this drums. Let's and here let's maybe put on more voices. Let's say 3, so that it's not limited to this one. Let's get rid of this filter envelope thing. And now there we go. Now that the release is up, it's gonna kind of like have this loop length going like extending or bringing itself closer, right? This is a very nice sound. Let's use it. And I think we're good for now. I think we're good. We have a bunch of these. Now what to do with it? So what we can do is we want them to kind of play, but we don't want them to play simultaneously. That's not cool. So there's actually a few ways we can go about this. One way is separate them by different key ranges. We can, for example, go into the key section, right click, and distribute ranges equally. Then the notes that we play in a specific octave range will play that specific sample. Okay, there's one way. Let's undo this. Another way is using the chain selector. We can, for example, extend one of these to the end, right click, distribute ranges equally, and if we go to this macro section, press map, put the chain selector and map it to a macro, like so. And then we can select the sample, the sampler that we want to play based on where we place the chain selector. Okay, this is all nice and neat. Another way that we can go about this is using velocity, right? But this way disables any sort of velocity effects that we may have in the samplers themselves, such as, volume effects. In this case, we can use velocity to trigger different samplers. So we can go ahead and right-click, distribute ranges equally, like so. And using in the MIDI effect, we can go ahead and select a velocity tool and bring in all the randomness. Now I can see here that we have some space where it will not be hitting, so we can fix that by making sure that it's going above 64 and out low 64. That way there is all possibilities are available. This is also a preset in the velocity section, but I thought we'll just make it also ourselves. And now all we have to do is press record and listen to our drum machine play. And so on, right? It will not repeat itself due to the randomness of it, but we can help in arranging it and give it some compositional flow by finding those nice parts and arranging it ourselves. We can create entirely new grooves using just what we have here. Even this small little loop here, take a listen. And sometimes giving it a little bit extra flavor with random sounds input from the source file. So this pretty much concludes our lesson for today. I hope this was helpful, and as always, good creations to you. I wish you make some nice music, Peace out.